On behalf of the Alexandria City High School ROTC program, I extend heartfelt thanks to the Alexandria Fire, Police, and Sheriff's Department, as well as each and every one of you for joining us in this solemn yet essential gathering. As we stand here together, we honor the memory of 2,996 individuals lost on September 11th, 2001. This day marks a profound moment in history, one that forever changed our nation. Together, we unite to pay our respects, express our gratitude, and stand as a testament to the strength and resilience of our community. At this time, Cadet Second Lieutenant Gomez and myself will guide us through a comprehensive journey into the history and timeline of the 9/11 attack.
As 23 years to this day has passed since the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and Flight 93, which crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, we will take this morning to reflect upon and remember the events of September 11th, 2001. While most of us were not yet born when it happened, many people throughout the world can recount the day by the minute. They remember where they were, what they were doing, and what they saw.
We will take this time to review the timeline of events, just as millions of people saw it unfold. 7:59 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 takes off from Boston, bound for Los Angeles with 92 people on board. 8:14 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175 departs from Boston, headed for Los Angeles with 65 people on board. 8:19 a.m. Flight attendants on board Flight 11 report to ground personnel that the plane has been hijacked. The FBI is notified. 8:20 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from Dulles International Airport, headed for Los Angeles with 64 passengers. 8:41 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93 departs Newark International Airport, bound for San Francisco with 44 people on board. 8:46 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 hijackers crash the aircraft into the North Tower of the World Trade Center across the 93rd and 99th floors. 8:47 a.m. Within seconds, the New York Fire and Police forces dispatch units to the World Trade Center. 9:03 a.m. 5 hijackers crash Flight 175 into the South Tower of the World Trade Center between the 77th and 85th floors.
9:37 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77 is flown into the Pentagon, only 3.5 miles from where we stand today. 9:42 a.m. The FAA closes all airspace over the entire United States and orders all aircraft to land. 9:59 a.m. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. 10:03 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93 crashes into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers and crew stormed the cockpit. 10:15 a.m. The Pentagon outer ring collapses. 10:28 a.m. The North Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. 12:16 p.m. U.S. airspace is officially closed and there are no aircraft in the sky. For the next few days, first responders desperately searched the rubble nonstop for any survivors. For the next nine months, thousands of government agencies, contractors, and volunteers cleaned up the 1.8 million tons of rubble from Ground Zero, the name given to the site in New York City. At the Pentagon and Shanksville crash sites, there were also extensive searches and cleanup efforts. Today, millions of people from around the world visit all 3 sites to pay their respects at dedicated memorials. At this time, we will have Ben Hammond, the academic principal of the International Academy, representing Alexandria City High School, to say a few words.
Thank you. And thank you for that recounting. I think as all of us were standing here listening to that recounting, I was listening to it and I was thinking it was just breathless. Because I remember those moments. And the shock, it's just the utter shock in those moments as I watched on the television, and just disbelief, thinking to myself, this is impossible. Constantly saying to myself, this is impossible. I have some prepared remarks, but I just wanted to give voice to that. Thank you for that, that recounting of those events. On behalf of Alexandria City, Alexandria City Public Schools, I want to thank our invited guests for attending the Alexandria Police Department, Alexandria Fire Department, JROTC, our students, and other services and invited guests. My name is Ben Hammond. I'm representing Alexandria City. Mr. Duncan couldn't be here today, and also Mr. Carter Sinclair. You may not know this, but Mr. Carter Sinclair is a 9/11 survivor himself. His mother was in one of the towers on that day. He spent the day just not knowing what was happening. Cell service is down. Cell service isn't what it is today, right? It was jammed up. You couldn't get a call through. So the panic and the horror that people felt is still with me, at least. So I know Mr. Carter Sinclair couldn't be here in person, but he is here in spirit. The events of those days of 2001 in New York City and Pentagon definitely left wounds that some of you are feeling now, some of you have learned about, because now it's history. And it pleases all of us that we are holding this ceremony now, and we haven't forgotten. We said we would never forget, and we haven't forgotten. In those moments, we were afraid. In some ways, we still are. But we honor the fallen of that day and those that fell afterwards, protecting our country, by living our lives with joy. This has been said again and again, by continuing to live our lives, by going to school, by learning, by raising families, by living with a freedom from that fear. And in the second year of this commemoration, we said we would never forget, and I think as a community, we haven't, and we never will. So I'll end by saying, God bless our city, God bless this country, the United States. And with that, I'm gonna pass it off back to JRTC and some word from some of our services in fire and police department.
At this time, we will have Lieutenant Liz Magyar from the Alexandria Police Department to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for inviting us to be here today. I'm truly proud to be here to represent the Alexandria Police Department and to see all of your faces and to know that you are remembering what happened on this day 23 years ago. I was a detective at the time that this happened, and I was working the night shift, and it came across the television, and it was incredibly shocking. I could not believe that it was occurring. Quickly, I rushed, running into headquarters. I remember that day driving in where the roads were all closed off going up on 395 to the Pentagon. The smoke that was billowing along the highways that you could see, and the silence on the radio initially. When I arrived at the department, they were holding many of us just to stand by, that the first responders, the fire department, the police department that was on duty at the time had already run to the scene. So we had our officers, our police officers, responding immediately. The Alexandria Fire Department rushed to the location as well. And to know that your friends and your fellow colleagues are running into danger, that's what the first responders do, the medics that were responding to help the injured. It was quite a memory that is difficult to describe to anybody who didn't see it, didn't feel it. There are many people here who were watching this, touched by it. The Pentagon is just down the street. We have other people who have family members that work there. And I appreciate, and the Alexandria Police Department appreciates, that you are honoring and remembering all of those who responded, those who died in all of the events. But the Pentagon hits close to home, and it hits close to family and to our colleagues. So thank you to all of the Alexandria Police Department employees that responded, to the Alexandria Fire Department who responded, and all of our other first responders in the local area. I thank you for remembering this day, and I'm proud of all of you. Thank you.
At this time, we will have Lieutenant Houston from the Alexandria City Sheriff's Department say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Sheriff Sean Casey and the Alexandria Sheriff's Office, I thank you for inviting me. 23 years ago was a literal lifetime for a lot of people out there. You guys haven't even reached that point yet. But, you know, for me, it was basically yesterday. A long time before I was Lieutenant Houston of the Sheriff's Office, I was Staff Sergeant Houston of the United States Army. I was in 3rd Ranger Battalion as an infantryman, and then I changed over to become an intelligence professional, a 35 Mike, human intelligence collector and interrogator. And in doing so, I deployed multiple times to Afghanistan and then multiple times to Iraq. So standing in front of an Army ROTC makes me very happy to see you guys here because you're near and dear to my heart. I also was in an Army ROTC. So I'm glad that you guys are being a part of a legacy. Having deployed and then being from this area back then, I got to see the direct impact it had on the DMV, but also got to see the impact that it had globally. You talk about a day of mourning. Absolutely, we should never forget, ever. And we should pay respect to everybody who lost their lives on that day by mourning their loss. But it's not just about mourning. It's about moving forward. We should be hopeful. And I know hopeful might be a very strange word to use after describing such a horrible event. But we should be hopeful that we never have to experience something like that again. But it's also about readiness. We need to be ready to experience something like that again and be prepared to make our own sacrifices in defense of the nation and defense of the community. There's a lesson learned in every loss. And the lesson learned is that sacrifice is what it takes. And there's never been a more impactful example of that than September 11th, 2001. I encourage you all to not only honor the sacrifices that were made by all the civilian deaths that occurred on that day, but to also honor every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine, and every first responder that not only lost their lives on that day, but continues to make that sacrifice in other people's stead. Every day, there's a potentiality for danger whether you're a first responder. Even being a medic, there's an inherent danger to it. But if you're ready and you don't forget, we can be prepared and meet whatever disasters or hardships come, whether it be in our community or for the nation writ large. I thank you for having me.
At this time, Senior Master Sergeant Wagstaff will say a few words.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm not good with off the cuff, so I have to write things down. Good morning, cadets, students, instructors, staff. I am Senior Master Sergeant David Wagstaff, Cadet Captain Billy Wagstaff's dad. Thank you, Colonel Gary, for inviting me out to talk on this solemn occasion. In moments like these, I find that grand speeches tend to fall flat and that personal stories tend to convey the moment better. So here's mine. 23 years ago this morning, around 05:30 Pacific time, I went downstairs from my apartment to kiss Billy's mom goodbye as she was headed back to Las Vegas after spending a few days in San Diego with me. After a heartfelt goodbye, I went back up to my apartment to find my two roommates glued to the television set with smoke pouring out of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center in New York on the screen. At the time, we didn't know what was happening. Maybe an airline ran out of gas or was flying too low. It was tragic, but we didn't know what had happened. Minutes later, while the camera was still on Tower 1, we watched as the second airline smashed into Tower 2. This started us thinking something weird was happening. And 30 minutes later, just prior to this time in the morning, 23 years ago, the Pentagon was hit. And we knew our nation was under attack for the first time on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor. I can't exactly tell you my feelings that went through my head as I lived through that day, 2,700 miles away, but still intimately connected with my fellow Americans who were experiencing this horror firsthand. I was sad, I was scared, and I was angry all at once. Cadets, you are here wearing the uniform of the brave men and women, like the lieutenant here, who put their hands up and resolved to defend our nation against terrorists in the wake of those awful events. Be proud of this great organization that trains folks like you to become leaders. You honor their heritage by showing up and being a part of this great organization. Every time I go to a ROTC event, I see the future of our nation, and I know that we're in good hands. Now, I got this next part off the internet, so some of you may have seen it, but I thought it was a good perspective as we remember this day. 23 years ago last night, 246 people went to sleep in preparation for their morning flights. 2,606 people went to sleep in preparation for work in the morning. 343 firefighters went to sleep in preparation for their next shift. 60 police officers went to sleep in preparation for morning patrol. 8 paramedics went to sleep in preparation for their morning shift of saving lives. And 1 canine went to bed, a good boy. None of them saw past 1000 the next morning, September 11th, 2001. In the blink of an eye, their lives were cut short. Cadets, students, staff, life is precious. Tonight, as you go to bed in preparation for your life tomorrow, kiss the ones you love, hug a little tighter, and never take 1 second of your life for granted.
The United States flag is flown at half-staff in times of national mourning or out of respect for an individual or date. In remembrance of the September 11th attacks, our flags will be flown at half-staff today, and taps will be played to honor the ones we've lost.
Battalion, attention! Please at arms! Order on parade rest.
Now, let us pause for a moment of silence to honor and remember the 2,996 people who perished on that tragic day.
And now we will have our closing remarks by our Alexandria City High School JROTC Battalion Commander.
I want to start off my closing by saying thank you to all the special guests that attended, and I want to say thank you for accepting our invitation to our ceremony that we had here. As we leave and go back to our classrooms, let us not forget the tragic event that took place on this day, and let us have it in our minds and let it play back to you guys, because it means more than what it said. Let us never forget the lives that were lost 23 years ago. Thank you all for attending this morning. At this time, all JROTC cadets will report back to their first period class.
Battalion, attention!